hello there. I'm going to play a track, as I'm kind of doing at the beginning of most things at the moment. Wait for a couple of people to get in here. This track, for anyone watching on the catch-up, because I don't know if anyone's here just yet. So this track that I'm about to play, I was working on it for the live practice yesterday. I didn't get quite as much done yesterday, so I figured what I would do is just do a bit of an improvised version of this track. It's a track called 30 Days by the PB Underground. Hopefully you'll like it. I'm just going to have a bit of a mess around with it again while I wait for a few people to get into here, and then we'll jump into today's kind of Q&A lesson, which is all about doubles, Moeller, and dynamics, and I'll try and leave a little bit of time for any questions that come up through the live stream. Whoa, that's loud. Right, so like I said, this is a track called 30 Days by the PB Underground. I hope you like it. Cool. Bit of a fade out at the end, so cool. So let's get my notes up here for a second. Cool. So I'm just going to run ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I will run straight into the questions. I did have some questions to ask you guys throughout the live stream. If it gets a little bit busier, I'll ask those, but there's not too many people here at the moment, so I'm going to save those for another time when it's a bit busier. So if you're watching this in the catch-up, please do make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. That way you're going to get your notifications when this goes live. Or if you prefer to follow on Twitch, then head over to Twitch. I'll be spending a bit more time looking at Twitch very soon. If you do have any questions that you want to ask throughout the week, again, please do put those in the Notion submit a question form on your lesson notes. That way I can get around to doing more question and answer sessions like this. You can also use the set reminder feature for the live stream. So whenever you see the live stream sort of scheduled in your Notion, the link should be there. Follow that link and set a reminder so you don't forget. Then also the other thing is I have sent this out as well. I'm going to get the Discord server set up really soon. So I've sent out a message to all the parents. So make sure if you want to be part of that, make sure you get confirmation that your parents are happy for you to do that. And I'll get you set up with the Discord server so we can start some discussion and talk about some music and drums in there as well. Again, if I get any questions throughout the live stream, I'm going to do those at the end. So do put any questions in the chat at the moment. Oh, hi Arvin, good to see you. So Arvin, for your sake, if you have any questions during this Q&A session, then please put them in now, and I'll do a question and answer session at the end. Depending on how busy the chat gets and stuff, I may ask some questions throughout, so keep an eye out for those. Cool, awesome. So let's jump into the first subject of today's lesson, which is double strokes. Now, I had the question come in from me, who asked me this question? It was, hey, look at that, good timing, hey? It was you, Arvin. So Arvin asks some general tips for double strokes. So I'm going to go through a couple of things, a bit on some general technique when it comes to doubles. I should have brought my pad over, but I'm going to play it on the snare drum for the moment, or the hi-hat even. So I'm going to go through a couple of techniques. So I'm going to go through the push-pull technique and the Moeller techniques, also known as the stone killer technique. I'm going to go through some application on the kit as well. I find that there's no real point in being able to play double strokes super fast if you can't apply them in a musical way around the drum kit. So we want to get to that point as soon as possible. So I'll show you some interesting ways of eventually applying double strokes once they're at a certain speed. And then I'm also going to take you through a endurance exercise that was given to me from one of my previous teachers, a guy called Pete Riley. It's a really great exercise that will help you build up your endurance with double strokes. So I'm going to run through all of that. So without further ado, let's jump into this. So first things first, push-pull technique. So push-pull technique is essentially when you're using a wrist action followed by a finger action. So it allows you to get kind of 2 strokes for the price of 1. So just so I can kind of talk through it, I'm going to keep unmuting my microphone because I should have brought my practice pad over, but I can't bother to traipse around there and get it, so I'm going to do it on my hi-hat for the moment. Let me change camera angle so you can see over the top. So a couple of things here. You want to make sure, cool, Aiden's put a question here. What is your favourite bit of the kit and why? Okay, good question, Aiden. I'm gonna save that question till the end, so stick around for that. And yeah, I'll make sure I get through that. It's a good question, that one. So double strokes, so push-pull technique. Again, I'm going to go through this in kind of a quick way so I don't lose too many of you. If you want to get into this in more detail, let me know during the lesson, and then I can talk you through this in a bit more detail. But essentially, push-pull technique looks like this. We're going to do, the first stroke is going to start with your wrist pointing towards, or wrist arced with the stick pointing towards the ceiling. We're going to throw the stick down, and as soon as it hits this, the surface, we're going to kind of move our fingers kind of out of the way and let the drumstick kind of pivot up from there as well. So the rebound of that first stroke when you throw it down with your wrist is going to let the drumstick bounce up, and we're going to let our fingers kind of come off the stick a bit, to let the drumstick bounce up, and then we're in a perfect position to play the second note with our fingers. So we're going to snap our fingers closed, and at the same time, as soon as it hits, we're going to try and bring our wrist back up to kind of complete the motion. So it should be 2 motions. So it will look like this. Couple of pointers with this. Really important to make sure that you're not, to get the drumstick back up off that first stroke, you don't want to then rotate or pivot your wrist. You want to make sure that you're keeping your wrist as flat as possible so that when you engage your fingers, it comes in contact with the head. So push-pull technique is great for fast, small doubles, basically. It's not so great for surfaces like the floor tom because it's not so responsive, there's not too much rebound with that. So it's great for things like snare drum and hi-hat because those are quite bouncy surfaces. So let me show you. I'm going to play it on the hi-hat here because I think I'll play it on the snare drum because you can see that okay. Maybe I'll not. Maybe I'll do both. So this is push-pull sort of speeding up, and you can sort of see how the motion kind of turns from a quite big movement with your wrist. Kind of again, you're imagining that you're pushing the stick and then pulling the stick. So it turns from quite a big movement to a very small movement, and it kind of you are getting the first stroke and then the second stroke with your fingers. So first stroke with the wrist, second stroke with your fingers. Let me show you that up to speed on the snare drum. Cool, so there you go. So you can get quite fast with it. You can be quite articulate with your doubles as well, as long as you're quite snappy with your fingers for that second note. It does, however, open the door to kind of a little bit of a lumpy sort of sound with an accent almost of the first double stroke. So that is the first technique to help you with double strokes. The second is what's called the stone killer, or I often refer to it as the Moeller doubles. Again, I've seen a lot of people talk about this. There's a great video on Drumeo with Thomas Lang. He talks about this video. I can't quite remember what it is, but I remember him showing it in quite an extreme way. I won't be able to demonstrate it in quite the ability that he can. But the other person that showed me this is again the same person who showed me the endurance exercise, Pete Riley, who has amazing double strokes. And this one is really great for things where you need either a lot of volume, a lot of dynamic from your doubles, or if you're working on a slightly less reboundy surface like a floor tom. So the way this one works is you're going to use Moeller technique. I'm going to get into this in the next question. So if some of this goes over your head, I know this is a bit weird, but skip this bit, go forward, and then come back, because hopefully this will make a bit more sense, or just kind of watch it in order, and then you'll have that there for the next bit. Right, so essentially what you're going to do is Moeller stroke is made up of 4 strokes. I'll get into those in a moment. We're going to use 2 of those strokes. We're going to use an upstroke first, followed by a downstroke. And what this is basically doing, in the stone killer exercise, essentially you just play doubles with an accent on the second of each double. So playing a right hand and then a right hand accent, a left hand and then a left hand accent. The way Pete told me to work on it was to play an upstroke for that first note and a downstroke for the second note. So what you're doing here is you're developing this kind of quick reflex with your hand, getting a up to a downstroke. So the exercise, I'll do it on the hi-hat, it sounds okay for here. So the exercise will go like this. So you're going to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And the great thing about that is you're not relying on the, like with the push-pull, you're kind of relying on the rebound of the surface to bring that stick up. You're not doing that with the push-pull, with the Moeller doubles. So let me show you that on the snare drum here, slowed down, sped up. And I'm also going to play it on the floor tom as well. It's not going to be super articulate. It's not my strongest point, but you hopefully will hear that you can start to get doubles, stronger doubles on even a slightly less sort of reboundy surface like the floor tom. So on, you get the idea. So those are really great for bringing out the kind of overall dynamic of your doubles. And again, the application on the floor tom is kind of helpful. It allows you to use a lot less you don't have to rely on the rebounders, sorry, is what I meant. So let's jump into the application of this because I want to run through the other stuff in a bit more detail as well. So I personally like we're going to talk about 3 kind of applications. We're going to talk about how to apply small push-pull doubles on the hi-hat as little kind of flurries. If you were watching the song at the start, I was doing this quite a bit in there because it's one of my favorite things to do. Then we're also going to look at how you might use it as like a snare drum roll and sort of using it in combination with accents to kind of give you almost like sort of snare solo-esque stuff. And then we're also going to look at it in a isolation kind of more method where you're looking at a right-left-left sticking, so just doubles with your left hand, or a left-right-right sticking, doubles with your right hand. So here's the first one. All I'm going to do is I'm going to play 16th notes on my hi-hat. 2 and 4 on the snare drum, so coming down to the snare drum. And occasionally, I'm going to double one of those 16th notes. So it's all hand to hand, right, left, and then occasionally, I'm going to double it by doing a push-pull for that one note. I might do 1 double, I might do 2, I might do a combination of them, and I'll do it slowly so you can kind of see what's going on here, and then I will do it kind of up to speed where it sounds quite cool. You can use this in conjunction with accents after it when we start looking at things like 5-stroke rolls and 6-stroke rolls, where you're usually playing a consecutive amount of doubles followed by an accent or followed by 2 accents. So here's a couple of ideas looking at the application of double strokes on the hi-hat. The idea. So the next one is snare roll. So this is great by basically playing an underlining 30-second note roll, so double 16th notes essentially, and then occasionally playing a accent with either the right hand or left hand. So I'm going to be playing this underlining double stroke roll, and then occasionally I'm going to play an accent. Whenever you play an accent, you're not going to double the kind of note value, so you're going to play a 16th note. So for example, you'd play 1 note and then you'd carry on with the doubles. And you can hear there's a bit of a gap there. That's the 16th note value in comparison to the 32nd note value. So here's some stuff all on the snare drum, playing a 32nd note double stroke roll with accents. Same thing, but a little bit faster, starts to sound kind of cool. You can move those accents to the toms, for example, or to crash and bass drum. So you get the idea. So you can start to sound a little bit kind of solo-y. It's great for picking out sort of phrasing. So you know, if there's a particular rhythm that you want to play, it's great for kind of filling in the gaps, basically. And the final one I find kind of interesting in a groove context is playing a right-left-left sticking. You can also do this left-right-right sticking, but I don't use that too much just because I find that the right-left-left one kind of works in most contexts. The left-right-right sticking tends to work better if you're playing either open-handed stuff where you're staying at the kit where your left hand's on the hi-hat, or if you wanted to play like a little bit more kind of open like this, or for example doubles on the ride cymbal. For most of the time, right-left-left sticking works just fine because then you've got open to being over the sort of doubles, moving your right hand around the kit. So the sticking is as simple as going right, left, left. We're going to kind of accent the right, and you're going to play a small, again, a push-pull double in this case, to sort of fill in the gaps. So right, left, left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right, left, left. So within the drum groove, the way that I like to play it, oh damn, I can't remember the name of the song, but there's a really great song that I kind of really clicked into this by a band called Dave Matthews, or the Dave Matthews Band, some people call it. And he's basically playing a kind of a 12/8 feel, or is it 12? I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's playing a drum groove where you're filling in all of the gaps, and then you're coming down with the right hand to play a backbeat. So could sound something like this. So again, a nice little one, and it's a really great workout for your left hand because most of the time your left hand is a lot weaker. So playing right, left, left stickings is a great workout for your left hand there. Cool, so that's a little bit on the application. I'll just show you very briefly the endurance exercise that Pete Riley gave me. I think it's a great one, and if you check out his stuff, he's got some cool stuff on YouTube. You can see some immense playing over there. So basically all we're going to do, I won't play this whole exercise because it takes a good amount of time to play through. I'll show you the concept, and then if you want to go through it further, then let me know during the lesson, your next lesson, and I will elaborate on it. So essentially you're going to play 16th notes on the snare drum. I'm just going to play it over here for a second so I can talk over it. And you're going to start by doubling the last 16th note, so the of the 4. So you're going to play 16th notes, da, 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 and then on the left hand, on the of the 4, you're going to play 2 left hands instead of 1, so doubling it. And you're going to keep building that up. So you're going to double the last note, and then double the last 2 notes, and the last 3 notes, and so on. So it will sound like this. So you can see I doubled the last note and then the last 2 notes. I'll just play the first kind of bit up to speed, and you can sort of see how it can be quite a good endurance exercise. And I'm going to sort of skip through them, just doing them once each time. You would repeat like 4 times and then come back down. It's kind of the general rule. and so on. And you would go until you get the whole bar, and then you go all the way back down, and you repeat 4 times before doubling the next note. So that's a little bit about doubles for you, Marvin, there. We can go through those in much more detail during your lesson if you like, but I think it'll just show you a little bit of kind of all of my kind of general tips when it comes to doubles, and then we can hone in your technique. In general, when it comes to developing speed with things, a great idea is to work on your endurance to help your speed. So I typically practice for longer times, but with slower tempos, and then also do kind of blasts of faster kind of tempos. So that I can work on my technique and my kind of endurance, which will therefore help my speed. Cool, right. We've got a question here from Arvin again. On an acoustic drum kit, could you change the sounds on like how the snare drum sounds like an electric kit, or no? Good question, and I will get to that right at the end. I've got a question for you guys though, since there's a couple of you here. So I'd be interested to see how many of you actually answer this one, because it's something that I think I kind of knew an answer to this when I was a bit younger. And then as I started to progress into the drumming world, I found more and more answers to this question. Essentially, nice easy question, but who is your favorite drummer? I'd be really interested to see who you guys say, because I don't normally kind of push drummers on my students, so I'd be interested to see if any of you have a favourite drummer, basically. So who is your favourite drummer? And if you want to, you could say why, but yeah, just be interested to see who your favourite drummer is, essentially. So if you answer that in the chat now, that'd be great. Okay, so jumping into the next thing, we're plowing through time here. So the next question that I had came from, see, I think I know who it's from. Yes, so Isaac asks Moeller techniques around the drum kit and how to go about it. Now, for any of you who don't know what Moeller is, it's something that I will definitely talk to you about in not too long away. Normally I kind of get into it, it's sort of around about the grade 2 or 3 level. So if you're not quite there yet, then you will be soon. And we'll jump into it in more detail there. But I wanted to give you a very brief overview of Moeller technique, and then I wanted to show you a couple of applications, because Isaac's question is specifically about using it on the drum kit. And when we can look at, sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between focusing on technique on a pad or a snare drum, for example, and you can spend ages and ages and ages working on that, but getting to the kit is really the most important part. So, Moeller technique. Essentially, in short, the Moeller technique is a set of 4 movements, depending on who you ask, that is anyway. This all goes with disclaimers, as people talk about this in so many different ways. I'm not going to get into the whole backstory of Moeller technique, but I'm just going to go into kind of what it is. But if you want to dig some more research, and if you don't know much about this, just type in Moeller technique. So M-O-E-E-L-E-R. Some people call it Moeller technique as well. Initially developed by, or kind of, I suppose, coined by a guy called Jim Chapin, who taught crazy amount of great drummers out there, and then it's kind of been changed around a little bit since then. This is my own take on Moeller technique. So if you're watching this and you, if you're watching this and you think, oh, that's wrong, let me know, because I'd be really interested to see how you've been taught Moeller technique as well. Cool. Arvin's answered the question. What does he say here? I'll be honest, I don't know that many famous drummers. However, I do like some drummers that really, sorry, my screen keeps going high, that really do good drum covers on songs that I like. For example, what's the name? Kin Productions. Cool. Well, I haven't seen anything from Kin Productions, so I will definitely check that out. And if you don't have a favorite drummer, I think it's a really common thing. You look at the kind of music that you listen to. Who plays that kind of music? Who's responsible for the drum parts that interest you? For me, when I was younger, I mentioned this in I think the first or second live stream. My initial, no, I didn't actually. My first kind of initial drummer that I was really inspired by was a guy called Travis Barker, because I was really into the band Blink-182. And then as I developed, as I found new bands that really inspired me, I liked those drummers. And then ever since then there's been like clinician drummers, people who like taught playing drums and teaching drums, that I really, really like. So yeah, great. That's a great answer, Arvin. And I think you know, I think it's a really common thing to not know that many kind of famous drummers. You don't have to look at, oh, okay, I like this band, so therefore I like this drummer. You can like a drummer and not like the music that they play in some ways because you like their technique and their sound, for example. So definitely do some digging, and I highly recommend, you know, looking into some other drummers out there as well. Oh, cool. Got another answer here from Aidan. So Roger Taylor, yes, was the best for me. Not only do I love Queen, the songs are just so good that it just made him my favorite drummer, to be honest. I know a lot of people that that really love Roger Taylor, and again, I think Roger Taylor is a great example of someone that has been so influential by the music that he's played. And you know, there's some iconic drum grooves that he's been part of, kind of coming up with and creating, and also that kind of you know, the Queen sound as well. So there's lots of reasons to like someone like Roger Taylor. So yeah, great answer, Aidan. Cool, so let's jump into Moeller technique. So like I said, 4 basic movements. Essentially, we're going to have 2 accented movements, so 2 loud movements, and 2 quiet movements. The first accented movement is going to start from a high position, stick pointing up, closed grip, and we're going to throw the stick down. It's going to produce an accent or a loud note, and then we're going to immediately come back up with your wrist. So this is in the wrist rather than necessarily in your fingers. We do want to be loose with it, and you tend to sort of open up your grip a little bit, but overall the movement is mostly kind of in your wrist. So the full stroke, what is this? It's called a high to high position. Looks like this. It produces 1 loud note. The other accented note is what's called a downstroke. So this is from a high position to a low position. So rather than letting our drumstick bounce straight back up, we're going to restrict that bounce and keep our wrist flat to leave it about an inch above the surface of the drum head, and to kind of then allow us to play the next kind of note. So this is called a downstroke. And a downstroke can't be played in a row. You can't play 2 downstrokes in a row because it starts and finishes in a different way. You'll see that in a moment with the Moeller technique. It all is about leading into the next note. Then we have 2 unaccented notes. So we have what's called a tap. This is a low to low movement, so a nice small movement with your wrist. And again, that will produce a quiet note, so about an inch away from the drum head, a nice quiet note. And then the final one, which is the more difficult one, which I'm not going to get into the kind of details of this, is what's called the upstroke. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to relax the energy, you're going to kind of relax your wrist a little bit, allowing the drumstick to kind of come in contact with the head. You're going to bring your elbow up, your arm up like this, and then kind of reset. And that sets you from a low to a high position. It's a movement that people take a really, really long time developing. It's something that I'm still constantly developing. Looks somewhat like this. I'm going to play that on the snare drum because I think it's a fairer kind of representation. You can kind of see from the front here. An upstroke will look like this. And depending on the speed, you're either going to play it quite quick or you're going to play it quite slow. But the key is to play a quiet note rather than a accented loud note. Excellent. So those are the 4 movements. You've got your full stroke. Let me play it like this. It might be super loud. See how loud is that? That's pretty loud. I'll do it on here. So we've got our full stroke. We've got our downstroke. We've got our tap, and we've got our up. Again, producing 2 accents and 2 unaccented notes. So that is the Moeller's technique in short. How do we apply this? Well, let's take a look at a paradiddle for a second. So for a paradiddle, right, left, 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 2 singles and a double. We're going to place an accent at the start of each paradiddle. So the first right and the first left. So I'm going to kind of do it in the air, but it will sound like this. So you're going to go right, left, right, left, left. And we're going to place an accent, like I said, on that first one. So the Moeller motions for this is going to go like this. We're going to place, because we want to play an accent at the start, we're going to start with our hand up. We're going to play a downstroke. We're going to play an upstroke with the left hand, and then 2 taps. So we're going to go, again, it will be the same with leading with the other hand. So down, and then an up, and a tap, and another tap. So it will sound like this. So that's how you could apply in a rudiment like a paradiddle. You'd be looking at, okay, what basically you look at, am I playing an accent or am I playing an unaccented note? And what is that followed by? Again, if it's followed by, we can get into this in more detail during a lesson maybe, but if you're playing an accent followed by an unaccented note, you're going to play a downstroke. If you play an accent followed by an accent, you're going to play a full stroke. If you're playing an unaccented note followed by an unaccented note, you'll play a tap. And if you're playing an unaccented note followed by an accent, you'd play an upstroke. If you didn't catch that, watch it back and write that down, because that's a nice concise way of thinking about the movements there. So I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview so I don't lose anyone in this kind of middle ground. But the specific question that Isaac had is, how do you apply it to the kit? So we've seen it in kind of in individual motion like that. And we've seen it within a paradiddle, but I'm going to show you essentially a couple of different ways of applying this. I'll first of all use it in the paradiddle way there, but I'm going to move the accents around the drum kit. So the Moeller technique is a great way of moving efficiently around the drum kit and using dynamics as well. So let's have a look at what a paradiddle looks like moving the accents. And I'm either going to play either a tom or a snare drum, or I might even play a bass drum and a crash cymbal. So there you go. And you don't have to play it in that order. You can do whatever you like with the accents. You can move the unaccented notes as well if you like. Great. Okay, so that's applied as a paradiddle. Using it within rudiments like that is a great way of getting comfortable with various different combinations of full, down, tap, and up. And you can move accents around in a paradiddle and get pretty much every combination that you would need to get comfortable with. So let's have a look at a couple of really great applications of this. So the first most common one is looking at how you apply a down and up stroke on a hi-hat within a drum groove. And there's kind of a couple of different ways you can do this. You can either play a down followed by an up, and you'd play the downstroke kind of on the edge of the hi-hat and the upstroke on the bow of the hi-hat. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And you could use this in a groove context like this. Again, it just adds a nice kind of oomph underneath the kick drum and snare drum in that sort of case. And it adds a nice quarter note sort of rhythmic feel to that. So it takes it from sounding kind of choppy and robotic into a little bit more kind of a feel of kind of a lump in your playing, which is often kind of nice. So you don't have to do it in that order. You could do up, down, for example. So let me play you two examples. I'm going to play a little bit with down, up, and then I'm going to do the opposite of up, down, and I'm going to sort of vary it a little bit, bring it up to tempo, and you'll hear, hopefully you'll hear with the hi-hat that you can really get sort of a very different feel from just using those two motions of the down and the up. And so on. You get the idea. So even with just that one movement, again, it opens up the door to a lot of really interesting ways there. You could do exactly the same thing, but rather than playing on the hi-hat, playing on the bell of the ride cymbal. And this is a great movement because if you're over here in German grip to play the bell of the ride cymbal, striking the bell at a little bit more of a parallel kind of parallel direction here, then when you play a downstroke, you'll strike the bell with the shoulder of the stick, like that. And then by kind of nature of your movements, by playing an upstroke, your hand kind of dips in a little bit and means that you end up playing the tip of the stick on the bow of the cymbal like an inch or 2 inches or so away from the kind of initial position there. So the movement looks like this: down, up, down, up. I'll play that in context with both the same things, either with down, up, or up, down, down. and a little bit faster with a bit more context. So you get the idea. So there's a couple of ways of playing it in a groove. Now the other way is probably, again, a really nice efficient way of applying it around the kit is using it to incorporate accents into your fills. So we talked about how you could play accents within a paradiddle. Well, you can do that amongst anything. So let's take, for example, a single stroke roll. And if you're playing everything quietly, occasionally you might want to play an accent. So all you got to do is think one note ahead and think about, okay, I want to play an accent on the one, so I'm going to start with a down. So I'm going down, up, da, 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 and then on the and of the four, with the right hand before the right hand on the one, you're going to play an upstroke, allowing you to then play a downstroke accent. So you can do this in a really, it makes single strokes, for example, sound great. Let me show you 2 different tempos, moving it around the kit. I'll start on the snare drum and then I'll move it around a little bit, and hopefully you'll hear that you can play something, you can make something like a single stroke roll sound really kind of a lot more musical. So there you go. So applying it as in accents within single strokes is a great way of being musical with the Moeller technique. There's plenty more applications of it. Those are just a few. So hopefully that'll give you some food to think about, Isaac, and we can get into it a bit more during our next lesson if you so choose. Awesome, right, I think I've still got a couple of you here live at the moment. So question number 2 for you guys to be the final one I'll ask you guys, and then I'm gonna do one last little bit, answer one more question, and then I'll answer those 2 questions that we had there just a second ago. So question number 2 is, what genre of music do you like playing most? Pop, rock, funk, jazz, R&B, soul, disco, whatever you want to take. So I'd be really interested to see whoever is here. I'd be really interested to see what genre you enjoy playing most. Okay, so the final thing that we're going to take a look at comes from someone who I think is probably still here, Aidan. This is your question. Hey, who would have known that the 2 students that are here, Arvin and Aidan, or the 2 people that are at least chatting away in the chat, I'd be answering 2 of those. That is complete coincidence. So, Aidan asks, how do I use dynamics with my playing? Now, I'm kind of cheating with this answer because I've kind of answered this already. So, dynamics can be used in multiple different ways. So, I just showed you one, which is accents. So, playing louder notes amongst quieter notes. Using the Moeller techniques from the previous question that I answered will help you with your dynamics. The other way as well is looking at things called crescendos and diminuendos. So this is getting louder and getting quieter. There's lots of really interesting ways you can use this as well. We can also look at, okay, general dynamics throughout a song. So for example, you might play the verse a little bit quieter, a little bit softer than you might play a chorus. And then the other way, the other way that I find a little bit more interesting is actually looking at your dynamics as a whole. So looking at, okay, how loud is my bass drum in comparison to my snare drum and hi-hat to snare drum, for example. So looking at kind of being your own personal mixer, saying I'm going to bring up the bass drum a little bit louder, the snare drum a bit louder. Now I've kind of balanced my microphone so that it kind of gives you a bit of an overall good, hopefully balanced sound from the way that I tend to play. But in a live situation, you might have to balance yourself depending on the room sound or depending on the size of the room or the kind of energy. So balancing your sound is really, really important. And the final other one using dynamics is some fills with dynamics. So what I'm going to do is to answer this one kind of quickly. I'm going to show you essentially all of those in a little bit of a drum solo, a little bit of a kind of groove mini kind of drum song essentially. So I'm going to keep looking over my notes here so I remember what other thing I need to talk about or play, sorry. So I'm going to definitely be making this up as I go along. I'm just going to choose a tempo, I'm going to start playing a drum groove and I'm going to add some drum fills in there. And I'm going to try and incorporate dynamics in all of those different ways. So accents, crescendos and diminuendos, volume changes per section, my overall balance, so I might sort of play around with that a little bit and make the snare drum really quiet or the bass drum really quiet or loud with either of those. And then also just dynamics within fills like you saw throughout the Moeller technique stuff that I showed there. Cool, Arvin and Aidan, you've answered this question, so let's see what you guys said. Arvid says, I like playing pop, rock, and kind of R&B, but I like exploring different genres such as reggae and jazz. Yeah, and we've spoken. I'm very familiar with your interest in genres, Arvin, but I think he mentions a couple of really, really great ones there. So anyone watching on the kind of a catch up or even Aidan, if you're interested in looking at some of these, definitely looking at some different genres like reggae and jazz will open up your kind of world to different techniques, because it's just a different style. So there's going to be different techniques and different fills and different types of grooves for those as well. So yeah, that's a great answer, Arvin. Thank you very much. And Aidan says, rock is more of my favourite genre when playing drums. But in general, I prefer pop or like 2010 style pop and rap. So yeah, I think this kind of just goes with the kind of music that you've grown up with, Aidan, right? So, you know, rock in general, but kind of general sort of pop and stuff that you hear on the radios. I think it's a good thing to sort of be into kind of what is popular now. It's going to allow you to sort of open the doors and understand kind of what kind of styles of drumming are popular now, which is always a great thing to know. But also, you'll be surprised at how much kind of history is in some of the drum grooves that will be out and about in the pop genre. So it might be as simple as the kind of simple bump, gat, dunt, gat groove, or it might even be more of an electronic groove where there's not really any like hi-hat, there's just kick and snare patterns, or it might be kind of a sort of hashed version of a slightly older genre, for example. So yeah, looking at kind of what's pop and what's modern and what's in kind of the charts and stuff is a great way of sort of finding new genres, well, new drum grooves and interesting things. So yeah, that's a great answer. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to play to you for just a couple of minutes, and then I'll get into those two questions that I had from you. So, favourite part of the kit and why, and about adapting acoustic kit sounds. So, here we go. So I'm going to, again, just to reiterate, I'm going to play a little bit of solo, incorporating accents, crescendos and diminuendos, volume changes per section, overall balance of myself, and just general feels with dynamics. So have a listen and see what you think. Cool. There you go. Gives you an idea. So some accents, some crescendos. I missed a diminuendo. Diminuendo is getting quieter. Crescendo is getting louder. I suppose I did maybe some of that. I changed a couple of volumes there during some kind of almost small sections. I'm running out of time, so I want to move on to these questions. And a little bit of balance. You heard there I was probably playing, I did it with the bass drum mostly in the kind of groove. I was cross stick on the ride cymbal. And then just some fills and sort of solo-esque things using dynamics and accents like some of the stuff we saw during the Moeller question. Awesome. So those are all the questions that were submitted. Again, if you're watching this either on the catch-up or whoever is here at the moment, if you have more questions, the more questions I get, the more kind of sessions I hope I'm going to do. So please do put them in the Notion, in your Notion submit question form. As many as you like. If you have 20 questions, put 20 questions in there. I don't care. The more questions, the better, to be honest. So the final little bit here. I've had to. What did Arvin say here? In fact, I am learning songs on the drums called. It's this song on the song called Century, which is a song that made me interested in genre and rock. Is that Century by Fall Out Boy, by any chance, or is that someone else that you're playing? Because I'll be interested to hear that. You can tell me all about that in our next lesson. Maybe be interested to see how you're getting on with that. Cool, awesome. So to answer those first two questions that we had, first of all, Aidan asked, what is your favourite bit of the kit and why? Do you know, I haven't ever given this too much thought. I think the drum kit often gets mistaken for either one of two things. Either a collection of instruments, which is what it is, or one instrument, which is also what it is. So it really is both of those, okay? You know, it comes from decades of kind of us drummers and percussionists kind of collecting bits together, adding a snare drum with a bass drum, adding a hi-hat, adding a little cymbal, adding some tom-toms, collecting it to what we know now as kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat, ride cymbal, toms, crashes, basically, is the most kind of common sort of thing here. So, I thought it might have been Century by Fall Out Boy. Good song, good choice. So in terms of the favourite part, it's a really hard question. I mean, I'm going to say probably the cliche and say that snare drum is my favourite part because it's just the centre of attention, isn't it? It's what everyone, well, I suppose the bass drum, but I was going to say it's what everyone feels to, if that makes sense. So I'll give you an example, right, of how important the snare drum can be. I'm going to play the kick drum and hi-hat exactly the same, and I'm only going to change the snare drum part, and it will sound like a completely different feel. Have a listen to this. You get the idea. I'm just playing with a backbeat essentially, and that really can change the feel of a song. So snare drum, I'm going to be cliche and say the snare drum is my favourite part of the kit. You could be the most musical with it. There's lots of different stuff you can do, and it's always kind of the centre of attention, be it with rudiments or with the backbeat in that case. Hopefully that kind of answers your question, Aidan. And then the final thing here, just before we finish, Arvin asks, on an acoustic drum kit, how can you change the sounds like the snare drum, like you can do in an electric drum kit? Now, this is a really deep question. I'm going to be answering this question in much more detail over the coming weeks with the live streams, one of which is going to be talking about retuning the kit. So I want to do a live stream probably during the day, maybe a half term, in a half term or something. But it'll be reheading my whole drum kit pretty much, because this has been my practice kit for the past year due to the current situation, obviously. Getting back out there at gigs, I need to replace all the drum heads. So So yes, so tuning is the biggest way. Well, there's two ways actually, other than changing your drums. The biggest way that you can change the sound is going to be, well, three is. So head choice, so changing the drum head. If you take that out for equation and you're just looking at something to adapt what you currently have, it will be tuning and dampening essentially. So let me show you a couple of examples. We've got a couple of different types of dampening here. We've got something called a big fat snare drum. It's essentially like a bit like a drum head with the rim cut off and the center cut out in this case. And you place it over it and it sort of dampens the snare drum, gives it a kind of a big fat sound, hence the term big fat snare drum. And we've also got these little kind of rubbery pads or gel pads. These are by a company called Slapclats. Everyone also knows Moon gels. So these can be used to dampen in a less extreme way like this. We can also change the tuning. Don't think I'll do that right now, but we can also change the tension of the snare wires on the bottom to give you a different sound as well. I will do that now. When it comes to kick drum and toms, again, much the same thing, dampening, but also tuning. But you can also, with a tom, for example, you could take the bottom head off and get a sort of an interesting sound that way. You could, with the bass drum, you could take the front head off. You could put loads of cushions in the inside to really dampen it out, to cut it out. You could put no dampening in the bass drum and have an interesting sound from that as well. So dampening and tuning is the biggest sort of ways of fixing that. Let me show you the snare drum real quick and then we'll finish. So this is my current tuned snare drum, which is a brass snare. So it's a metal snare drum and it's tuned to kind of mid-high, kind of mid, I suppose more mid really, tuning. No dampening on this, although it is a 2-ply head, which is going to dampen it just a little bit further. Sounds like this. I'll play it quite loud. If I if I add some little slap clap to that, it will kind of take, there's a bit of reverb that you might hear at the moment, but I'll add some of this and you'll sort of hear the change. I'm going to add 2 pads to make it a bit more obvious. Sounds like this. And then finally with the big fat snare drum to dampen it further, sounds like this. So there you go, you can get some different sounds from that there. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks guys for tuning in and sticking around. Again, just please remember to subscribe and stuff so you get the notifications. Especially if you're watching this on the catch up, it would be good for you to kind of catch up during the live stream. Keep an eye on your Notion account. At the bottom of your notes, your kind of homepage will be the schedule coming up. Next week, it'll probably be Tuesday or Friday again. Might do Thursday, not too sure yet, so keep an eye out for that. It will be an evening because I know most of you guys are back to school at least, so yeah, so watch out for the time of that. Again, I'll send a message out again to get the Discord server up, so you'll get a notification before those. But for the moment, thanks again for joining in. Keep safe, as always, and where's my mouse gone? There it is. Cool, yeah. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you guys very soon.